Okay, let's get to the basics. What are LLPs? What are LLPs? What are LLPs? Okay, fantastic. We have a couple of answers. A limited liability partnership, right? So now the big question arises, right? We have limited liability as the answer coming in on the chat box, as well as we have a couple of interactive people raising their hands. So fantastic. So which brings me to my next question. What's the whole idea behind LLPs coming into existence? Because just the way the companies act, the companies are governed under the Companies Act of 2013, or you would have the partnerships, the Indian Partnership Act 1932. You would come to realize that LLPs are the newest structure on the block, right? LLPs are governed under the Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008, right? Companies, of course, there was an erstwhile Companies Act which came in 1956, and now, of course, we are in the next version came in 2013. So the newest one, the newest kid on the block, as I would put it, right, is the limited liability. Okay, let's understand why was it really even needed in the first place, and why, most critically, why LLPs. Okay, now just to know where does my audience exactly stand. Okay, why would you have LLP? Why would you ever open an LLP? And it's okay to not know. Okay, so if you have an answer, if you would like to make an educated guess, please let me know. Why would you have an LLP in the first place? Okay, reasons: contract, second partnership, third small business. Okay, if I ask you, what do you mean by a contract? Because, well, the basis of a regular partnership is also a contract. So if you could also help me with that, Swaroop. Trust me, more than the formation part, I'm very keen on covering the formation is, of course, going to be one part of it. The larger part of it is going to be the use cases of LLPs. Liabilities of partners are limited to their contributions, right? Now, lesser compliance, absolutely. When we say lesser compliance, we're obviously saying lesser compliance relative to the companies, right? Relative to private limited companies. And I'm not even getting to public companies. Yes. So it has the benefit of limited liability. Yes. And number two, it has the flexibility of partnership, right? In which case, my third question is probably going to be easier. What are the problems with a limited liability? Let's ignore the part that, okay, there is probably more compliance than a sole proprietorship. Iske alawa, what do you think is a problem with a limited liability? What are the probable areas where the LLPs kind of like stop short of being the absolutely go-to structure for things? Because there is one point that I'm really looking at which is not mentioned here, and that's something that I'm really willing to focus on. Where does LLP as a structure stop short, or what is that flaw per se, right, which makes LLPs not the most perfect structure? What are the probable challenges per se with LLP? How many of you here have logged into the MCA website, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs website? How many of you, if you could just do like a quick show of hands of people who have actually logged into MCA website, or who have worked with CS, or are CS themselves, or are doing some kind of internship at a chartered accountancy firm, or with a CS MCA website? Could we just have like a quick show of hands? The Ministry of Corporate Affairs website. How many of us have actually worked with it? So let's just understand. Compliance is usually never the struggle. The problem is, even if you worked with the income tax website, you would come to a realization, or maybe GST website, right? Or Maha GST website, assuming you are also from Maharashtra, Maha GST website for a lot of other documentation work, right? You'll come to a realization that website अपनी मनमर्जी से चलती है very often. More often than not, it's a very scandalous thing to say, but the website pretty much works at its own whims and fancies. So you may really be trying to do things, you may be trying to put certain applications, so on and so forth, but them getting through or no, वो website का मर्जी है, वो होगा तब होगा, नहीं होगा तब नहीं होगा, right? So that's one part of it. Second, what's the root cause of why LLPs had to come into existence? I think all of us sitting over here have been witness to at least one of these cases when your father or your paternal uncle or your maternal uncle or someone decided to start a business with someone in their family, right? You started off with a partnership firm probably 20 years back, right? And right now there are disputes. सीन ये होता है कि जब भी हम पहले कोई अगर जो पार्टनरशिप वगैरह रजिस्टर करी हुई थी, LLP डीड्स, partnership deeds बनाई हुई थी, we were never thinking or starting our business with the thought that there could be problems in the business at a later date. Yes, but the truth is right now that when it comes to the resolution of that dispute, right, we come to realize that partnerships have put us in a certain difficult situation, Yes, because a lot of things are not just as well defined. Number one. Number two, of course, the liabilities are joint and several in nature. Number three, let's remember the biggest problem that an LLP shares with a partnership firm is the fact that they're both going to be taxed at 30%. Okay, they're both going to be taxed at 30%. ये बहुत critical factor हो जाता है. ये 30% tax होना is rather more of a problem for an LLP, but not so much so for a partnership firm. Okay, and let's try to understand why. I'll come to the fundraising bit, which someone has actually mentioned in the chat box, right? Okay, in fact, over to you guys. If I ask you that this 30% tax rate is a problem for LLPs, though partnership firms are also taxed at 30%, why am I saying that this is particularly just a problem with LLPs? Any idea? Any fair guesses? Any guesses? Why do you believe that the 30% tax rate, or okay, one second, we have an answer here. LLP gives the benefit of. Is it to do with the principle of mutuality? Not really. I'm strictly looking at the taxation perspective at the moment. Corporate tax, what about it? If someone could kindly. Corporate tax is not applicable on LLP, which is, yeah, like I mentioned. So your LLPs and your partnership firms are both going to be taxed at 30%. But I'm saying, of course, it's not 25%, it's 30%. So you're obviously paying higher tax vis-a-vis companies, right? But this is just a problem for LLPs and not for partnership firms, despite both of them being taxed at 30%. I'm trying to understand if you guys can guess why is 30% tax a problem for partnership firm, a problem for LLPs, but not for partnership firms. Double taxation. Okay, so this is one point which I would kind of deny. I would say that this is in fact one of the largest reasons why we work with a lot of LLPs. Right, LLPs में double taxation नहीं होता because profits of a partnership firm are exempt in the hands of the partner, and the definition over there means to include LLPs. So there is no double taxation per se. I will come to this comparison in due course. Right now, before getting into LLP versus a private limited company or a company per se, I'm trying to understand LLP versus a partnership firm, both of them being taxed at 30%. And yet I say there's a bigger problem with LLP compared to a partnership firm. What could be the reason? I really like the interaction, first thing first. So thank you so very much. More compliance, agreed, more compliance, but does it really affect the taxation angle to it? And trust me, when a lot of people, a lot of entities, including ours, right, for every deal, not every deal, rather multiple deals of the same client, we technically create an SPV, right, a special purpose vehicle. These special purpose vehicles that we create are actually LLPs, right? So you could say that for every 2, 3, 4 deals, we're probably creating one LLP, right? So though we have LLPs, we love limited liability and we do not want double taxation. That is why we create LLPs. Okay, I'll come to this in a bit, right? But that is not the reason. More compliance is not the reason. Compliance is good sometimes because if there's more compliance, there is more transparency, there is more, I would say, answerability, right? If these two things are there for companies like ours and a lot of our competitors, right? If there is more transparency, we are building more trust. So I would say compliance is good and not per se negative. Compliance is fantastic, in fact. Like all our data would be probably available wherever you're looking for it. Okay, so loss carry forward and so on and so forth, rules over there pretty much remain the same. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to actually tell you the reason. Okay, the reason is that LLPs are not eligible for what we call as presumptive taxation. Okay, there's a concept of presumptive taxation and income tax that can be available by individuals and partnership firms, but not by LLPs. Okay, so what's this presumptive taxation? It simply tells you that, hey, you know what? If you're a small business, you're unable to maintain your books of accounts and so on and so forth. We can assume that your income is 8% of the total receipts. And if it's digital income, if the income is coming in digitally, we are going to straight away assume that 6% of your income is your profit, and we are going to tax just that 6% or that 8%, as the case may be. So this is something that you can actually do in a partnership firm. तो effectively अगर जो आप देखोगे, भले ही मुझे 30% tax भरना है, but if all my income is actually getting taxed out of all my income, all my revenues, only 6% is considered to be profit, deemed to be profit, right? So 6% ka 30%, which means that the net tax burden in a given year is actually just 1.8%, right? it's 30% of that 6%, which is assumed to be my profit. So 1.8% tax is, well, not quite a lot, right? Without the hassle of maintaining books per se. I'm not saying it's the most fantastic way out. I'm just saying that it's easy because I'm pretty much my compliance requirements from the income tax standpoint really reduce. Right? Of course, अगर मुझे उससे कम profit दिखाना है तो मुझे audit वगैरह करना पड़ेगा. That's a different ball game, right? But the fact that I could go about easily with my business without really the need to maintain the books of accounts as prescribed by the Income Tax Act of 1961, I'm in a good place. Okay, so that's one big reason, one major drawback that LLPs have vis-a-vis a partnership firm, though they do give you the benefit of limited liability. Okay, so that's one part. Second, now coming to companies versus LLPs, right? Companies ka, if you have to withdraw your profits, right? If you have to withdraw your profits from a company, how are you going to do that? Even if you're the promoter, you're probably still going to be drawing salary. Yes. The other way is professional fees or something like that, both of which are going to be subject to TDS. If you withdraw salary, then of course you're going to probably fall in the highest possible tax bracket with very little deductions, which a salaried individual can avail. All of these things combined would mean that your ability to pass on the profits, it's like saying मैं 100 रुपया कमा रहा है मेरा company, but by the time it comes to me, Akshat, the director of the company, to use the money for something, I am probably just going to be left with 45 rupees. Okay, that's an approximation, of course. It's probably going to be a little more than that, but well, this is a genuine problem because 25 rupees is pretty much going to get cut at the very outset, right? 75% is going to be 75 rupees on every 100 is retained by the company. Once out of the salaries is paid, I have minimal deductions to avail, right? Especially if I fall in the 30% tax bracket, all the deductions available are not enough for me. 1.5 2 लाख 3 लाख का डिडक्शन लेके कुछ नहीं होने वाला है. Yes, I'm still going to end up paying very high taxes. So that is one very big part of the reason why LLPs would probably supersede companies. LLPs के केस में ऐसा नहीं होता, जैसे कि मैंने बोला, profits of a partnership firm or an LLP when distributed to partners are tax free in the hands of the partners. Yes, so that's one big plus. Number two, compliance of an LLP is definitely less. Compliance of an LLP is definitely lesser than that of a company. So that becomes number two. Given these factors, if you just combine all of these, right, you'd come to a realization that not just for domestic transactions, but a lot of international transactions also, LLPs do seem to be a very good way out. Okay, they seem to be providing solution to very long-standing problems because they have pass-through kind of features. I wouldn't exactly call it pass-through. I would say pass-through kind of features. Yes. Now, next step, right? How do you basically apply for an LLP, and what are the modern use cases of LLP? These were the next two topics that I intend to cover up. Right. First thing, of course, when you decide to have your own LLP, you can just actually log into a website. It's pretty easy to file the run application form, which is reserve unique name. Once you fill in the run application form, if I were to be having time, I would have probably shown you how to go about with it. But you file the run application, you pay 200 rupees for it. Yes. If in case your name does not get approved, which typically will get approved or not get approved, you'll have a response within 7 days. On a very good day, we have had a response in less than 24 hours also, right? So once they respond, if they have raised some query, you obviously suggest other alternative names for your LLP, and you send the application back. I don't think more than one or two reapplications are allowed. If even on the second attempt you are not satisfying the name criteria, because, well, you know what, when you actually apply for your unique name, they show you the probable litigations that you could get into. When I say litigations, I basically mean that someone else is probably using similar names, right? So if your first name is very similar to other names, your name application could get rejected. But if your last names that you're using, for example, you're a chemical company. So if I say XYZ Organic Chemicals, okay, if my XYZ is unique, I'm way more likely to get through. Okay, but if my organic chemicals is obviously not unique, I may not really run into problems. I'm going to be fine. Yes. And once the application is approved, wherein your name is approved, you receive your name approval, as we call it, right? You finally go about filling up your LLP form. In case you don't have DIN, you apply for the director's identification number and so on and so forth. All of these process and a DSC. All of these processes are not very expensive. I think a DSC would typically cost you anywhere between 1,200, 1,500 for 1 or 2 years. The DIN application is probably going to cost you 1,000 rupees for a year, and so on and so forth. So not a very expensive process per se. And the form is quite basic. आप एक बार बैठ के खुद से भी देखोगे तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है जो आप खुद से fill up नहीं कर पाओगे. Yes. Once you are done with this, your application is probably, they're going to inform you on the basis of application. You're most likely going to get through. I've not really seen people get into trouble. And within next 30 days of approval of your application, you will have to upload your LLP deed. You will have to submit your LLP deed. So please remember, बाद की compliance में एक LLP deed का submission important हो जाता है. उसके बाद तो खैर annual returns वगैरह जो basic statements होते हैं वही upload करने हैं. They are not very complicated. LLPs also have a very liberal scheme wherein अगर जो मेरा suppose LLP form हुआ है November में, right? For example, I'm forming my LLP in like next 10 days, right? My first annual returns do not essentially have to be filled next year. I could fill it next to next year. तो पूरे 1.5 साल का जो भी statements है मैं वो next to next year में file कर सकता हूँ. I do not necessarily have to file it in the next year if I'm filing my application post October, right? October or post October, right? So these are a couple of quick things that you may want to know when you decide to begin with an LLP. Now, the next part of what I really did want to cover, right, because we have some 45, 50 minutes odd, right? So before we actually go to the Q&A part of it, and maybe from there, maybe I could have like a lot of insights or things that I may not have explained, but I could probably help you out on, are the modern day use cases of LLPs, right? Now, what are these use cases of LLPs? बेसिकली हम ये बोल रहे हैं कि LLPs से बेसिकली आप क्या क्या कर सकते हो, राइट? या LLPs का इस्तेमाल किस लिए होता है, right? Remember, LLP these days has become a beautiful vehicle to even pool your investments, right? Or rather, pool investments, not your investments, but rather pool investments, right? So, say for example, if I am a startup which is looking to raise money, I could request the investors that instead of all of them coming in individually, okay, which could well mean that there are too many names on my cap table, the capital table, right? I could request them that, hey, why don't all of you just form an LLP and let that LLP be a shareholder in my company, and that's how you invest money. Yes. So it is very popularly known to be a vehicle to pool your investments. That's one. Number two, like I said, we officially use LLPs, right? How do we use LLPs to pool the investments? Right. Let's just remember that partnership in LLPs, this is very critical. Partnership in LLPs is not the same as issuance of securities, right? What does this mean? Right? Whenever you issue securities, right, the private placement norms of SEBI would tell you that, SEBI and MCA would tell you that you cannot issue, rather MCA, not even SEBI, but actually, they tell you that you cannot really float your securities or raise money by floating your securities to more than 200 people, which means if I run a website or if I'm running a platform, right, I cannot really go out and straight away pool in money by selling my equity, because that would tantamount to equity crowdfunding, which is expressly prohibited under Indian law. Yes. So the only other way which is left out for me, or the easier way rather, which is left out for me, is all of these investments can actually be pooled in an LLP. Because LLP में investments लाना is not non-compliant. Yes. Does it mean it's a gray area? Not really. It also, though, however, we personally prefer that we still are stringent in terms of how many people is a particular deal shown to, and we make sure the deal is not shown to more than 15 to 20 people, in like a closed knit circuit, right? Because, well, honestly, better safe than sorry. The idea is to not be not just to be on the right side of the law, but to not even be in the gray areas of law. Yes, that becomes very critical. One more thing that I think has been a modern day problems that LLPs do end up facing, and not just LLPs. I think this is a problem pan industry, irrespective of the structure. though I've not seen sole proprietors really facing this problem, are the concerns with regards to GST registration. अभी GST registration में actually इसलिए concerns raise हो रहे हैं because there have been too many issues which have been red flagged, wherein there are a lot of hawala transactions and a lot of circulating of money in the within the set group of companies, right? That is why you will notice that one big challenge that LLPs these days face is to prove the authenticity of the purpose of the LLP, the objective of the LLP, and the operations of the LLP to the GST authorities. Which again, I think if it's compliance, I think stringent compliance is beautiful. It always, has far more positive impact on us than compared to the negative, right? So if I had to like quickly summarize in terms of what are we looking at when we look at an LLP, right? We're looking at slightly more compliance compared to a partnership firm, but much greater transparency. I want you to look at compliance as transparency. यहाँ पे actually challenge transparency में सिर्फ इतना आता है कि very often website नहीं चल रही होती, right? The website has its own or the mind of its own, right? That's a very big challenge. Second, taxation wise speaking, you're not going to be subjected to double taxation, which is a very big plus of an LLP. Number three, because being a partner in LLP is not deemed to be a security or a financial instrument, you can actually have multiple partners joining the LLP, right? Also, remember the ceiling of having up to 200 partners in an LLP has also been removed, which means that the government actually understands that this is a legit vehicle for investments also, and not just a vehicle for conducting hardcore business activities, right? I'm repeating once again, the limit of 200 as the number of partners of an LLP has been removed, which makes it easy. And the government, I believe personally, understands that LLP is a legit investment vehicle to not just pool in investments in India, but investments from outside of the country have also been coming into India using LLP structures these days. So, in terms of subsidiaries, wherever the objective permits, you'll see a lot of private companies are actually being replaced by LLPs as a subsidiary, right? So that's of course one very important use case that we've actually been seeing, right? Challenges, like I said, you will not be allowed to use presumptive taxation for yourself, which means that it will become almost mandatory for you to maintain your books of accounts. I think in terms of couple of pointers that I did want to mention, I think this is what we have. What we will do is that if we can at the moment, if you could just open up ourselves to the questions. So if you guys have questions, instead of typing it out in the chat box, if we could have you speaking, if you're comfortable and if you're not at noisy place, I would love to hear your questions and probably see if I can add more value per se in the LLP discussion that we are having at the moment.
Uh,
Yes,
Good
yes,
evening. Am I audible?
yes, very good.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Akshat. Wonderful session. Congratulations. My query is with respect to designation of partners from an LLP.
Okay.
Are the procedures anyway different from a normal partnership firm?
Do you mean the roles and responsibilities of the designated partner? Is that the
No, I am querying about if, let's say, there are four partners since
hmm,
inception in an
hmm,
LLP, and
hmm.
one of them decides to walk away.
There is no problem actually in that. The process per se, legally speaking, is very simple. I'll tell you, this is a struggle that I'm actually facing at the moment. Once I upload my fresh LLP, so the first thing that I would really suggest is make sure that you have a fresh LLP deed which is made, which speaks about a partner stepping out. Right. Ideally, this LLP deed is going to be a document which you can use wherever you want to use. For example, for GST purposes or income tax purposes, or maybe for your banks and so on and so forth. Ideally, this LLP deed is, of course, one part of it. The problem with the compliance part, it's not really difficult to remove a partner. It's just filling in a form, putting in the DSC, letting a chartered accountant put his signature. You're through. दिक्कत ये हो जाती है कि very often ये function MCA की website पे नहीं चलता. So the problem compliance wise, it's almost like zero because you're just filling up a form and it's just a per se the form filling is it's like a 10-15 minute thing max. Yes, what will test your patience is how wonderfully or otherwise does the website really work?
Thanks. If I can ask a couple of more questions in that
Sure,
context.
please. Sure, please.
So, assuming that your compliance carries on,
Hmm.
then is it a necessary step to also resubmit the new LLP deed, partnership deed, with the GST to ensure that that partner does not any longer appear as a partner in the GST compliances?
Yes, this is very much, I would very strongly recommend this. And my recommendation comes in from the fact that, see, अगर जो आप सिर्फ जीएसटी की बात कर रहे हो तो जीएसटी अथॉरिटीज आपसे ये चीज मांगने नहीं वाले हैं unless if it's during formation. So say for example, if you're applying for GST registration, they're by default going to ask for, they're going to say that, hey, MCA is showing that there are four partners, but you're claiming that you're just three partners. So over there, yes, it's going to be a struggle. But once a partner is exit per se, voluntarily the GST portal per se does not allow a place to go about and change the details. But yes, you could literally go in your GST registration form and edit the partner details. And if they require an LLP deed because something may or may not be visible on the MCA website, you will definitely they'll inform you that your fresh LLP deed needs to be submitted. So
Right.
it's
And in that
recommended, not mandatory.
Yeah, and thanks. And in that case, if that retiring or outgoing partner also was a person whose DSC was being used for submission of the GST returns,
Okay.
will that also necessarily require a fresh DSC to be filed, etc., along with the procedure of, submitting the compliance with the GST, where instead of four, now you are asking for three, and you're making that change, and you want one of the other three existing partners to assume the responsibility of filing the GST returns, and therefore their DSC needs to be now, you know, registered or made the prevalent DSC for
I'm
the
sorry, do you
GST
mean the
website to
authorized
send you.
signatory?
Yes, sir, exactly.
Okay. So if you're speaking of authorized signatory, I think an easier way out instead of actually going the DSC way or any electronic signature ways to just actually get your EVC changed. I mean, just the
Right.
person who, the authorized signatory, once that person changes, you can just rather verify it using Aadhaar EVC instead of going the DSC way. It might
So,
probably be less
for
hassle because
example, yeah, please continue.
yeah, I'll tell you the big part of the reason is that I have suffered this a lot personally because I use a MacBook at the moment, right? And MacBook is not very friendly with DSC device, DSCs particularly. So wherever I have an opportunity to do like an Aadhaar signature or an EVC, I would always prefer an EVC over any other modes of authorizing a particular form submission.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. I have one question in the chat, and then we'll hop on to the question that Sumedh has. Is GST registration must for every LLP, even if the business is just 1 year old with very less turnover? No, not really. I'll tell you why would I probably register for GST. Let me first tell you that GST compliance is another headache altogether. Unless your transactions are like very, very sorted, it's kind of funny the kind of notices that GST department could put out, right? With all due respect, because this thing could go on YouTube. So, well, I shouldn't be speaking a lot. You will end up in a compliance hassle if your turnover is very little, and you'll end up wasting a lot of financial and non-financial resources. In terms of registration, of course, if you're not a part of those scheduled states, you will have to register for GST if you're offering goods worth more than 40 lakh, or if your turnover is going to cross 40 lakh in this financial year, or if your services are going to cross 20 lakh. Barring this, there are certain RCM related situations, reverse charge mechanism related situations, wherein registration would end up becoming mandatory. Barring these, अगर जो आपका 20 लाख for services या 40 lakh for goods वाला turnover cross नहीं हो रहा है, the only reason why you may want to really get registered for GST is to get all the GST credit. You took a flight, you booked a hotel, you're paying 28% GST. You want all of that GST credit. Yes. Another very classic use case of getting GST registered is that if you end up paying for your own wedding, all the wedding expenses not allowable, right? But when you pay to an event organizer, the entire expenditure of what you paid to the wedding organizer is available to you as ITC. and that guy can also avail ITC for all the expenses that he's incurring. But if you incur that expense directly, you cannot avail ITC. So depend करता है कि आपको क्या input tax credit accumulate करके, you know, do you want to set it off against something or no? If your ITC is getting accumulated, I would say yes, go ahead and register GST. It might actually come in handy in future. I hope I've answered your question. Okay, we have Sumed who has a question.
Okay, I have, sorry, I have joined a bit late, so I just want to know what is the procedure for the closure of an LLP. That is my first question. And second thing, as you said, you can have any number of partners in an LLP as compared to the company. In case of partners, can there be partners from different states as well?
Yes.
And can this be used as a platform to raise the money for any, say, business proposal or such?
Yes, we actually do that for, like, for example, for Leasify, right? You can actually use LLP as an investment vehicle. For example, you decide to invest in construction of a resort, right? And you have partners pan India, right? You can actually call for investments from all across India, and all of these people can be partners, and they could well be, you know, as many as you would want them to be if they are all pooling in the money, right? So that answers the second part of the question. For the first part of the question, the prerequisite per se for closure of partnership firm, again, formally speaking, सिर्फ एक form भर के आपका closure हो जाएगा. But the thing is that you should have completed all your MC related compliance, IT related compliances. बाकी जितनी भी government compliances है, not just MCA compliances, अगर जो सारी complete हो चुकी हैं, तो ही आपका LLP का closure actually accept होगा. And for acts which were committed when the LLP was in existence, you may still be liable for those acts, if at all. Anyway, so there's limited liability, so I don't think it should be a big problem.
Okay.
So, like I said, actual closure is not a problem. Aju baju ka jo compliance karna padega, that could really take a little bit of time and energy.
Okay, and just adding to it, I mean, if you say it can be used as a platform to raise money, and when you say you are taking money from people and enrolling them as partners, say, can I take investment and say this is my partner for 0.1% or 0.25% of this
100%.
LLP?
100%.
Okay, so that can be done. So it is not that minimum 1% or 2%. You
No,
can take
nothing
it
like that.
0.1.
Absolutely. The only thing that I would really request you this, and this is again coming in on a very personal level, right? I would say a lot of partners or to be partners may be apprehensive about becoming partners in an LLP. I would also really want you to know the reason, right? Whenever we run a credit check, ठीक है, on a particular company, right? दिक्कत कभी कभी ये हो जाती है that if you are a partner in LLP, if you are also a director in a company, I want to lend money to the company in which you are the director, but that LLP is defaulted and you were just a sleeping partner over there, not really doing a lot. It could still be red flagged when I am doing your due diligence for lending money to the company, which is why a lot of people can be apprehensive in becoming partners. Of course, you could, you know, just get on a call and tell them that this was the case. I'm sleeping partner, I'm investor, so on and so forth. But there could be a little bit of discomfort, some comfort that you may have to give to your prospective investors on that note, क्योंकि वो credit में सारा वो link highlight हो जाएगा. Usually 4 to 5 relations तक बहुत सारे क्रेडिट ड्यू डिलिजेंस के वेबसाइट्स रिलेशनशिप्स दिखाते हैं, तो वो रिलेशनशिप में कहीं पे भी प्रॉब्लम हुआ तो वो क्रेडिट में कहीं ना कहीं रेड फ्लैग हो जाएगा.
Okay. I was just wanted to understand it from the point, say, for example, if you are running any construction company and you need finance, so it is very difficult to raise finance from high net worth individuals sometimes. But sometimes it is easier to raise finance from people who can just pull in 1 or 2 lakhs or 4 lakhs, whatever it is. So in that per se, I'm asking you that, okay, if you're giving me 2 lakh or 4 lakh rupees, you
Go
can
for
be a
it.
partner in this LLP for this percent. In
Go
that
for it. Go
perspective,
for it.
I'm asking.
Yes, go for it. I
Okay.
don't think it should be a problem.
And what about the profit share? They have to mention it that this is the profit share that you will be getting,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Yes, you'll have to mention the. So again, the capital share and the profit share could be different. So you'll always have the space when you're filling up your form to say that the capital investment share and the profit shares may not be correlated, right? The profit sharing और कौन कितना capital डाल रहा है वो दोनों अलग चीजें हैं. So that will again come in handy when the time comes to redistribute your profits. Sorry, I'm just reading out a question. If my partner LLP and want to raise funds from abroad, then how will it be enforced regarding jurisdiction part and government compliances? Just I think you will have to look at FEMA compliances, there wouldn't be a lot of problem in getting in the money. There would be problem in repatriation of funds. However, very honestly speaking, I'm not a FEMA expert, and I may not be the best person to guide you in terms of how to repatriate your money better to probably Middle East, because that's where a lot of money comes in from. So I'm not the best guide there. I'm so sorry. This was an answer to the question asked by Advocate Suresh Kavit. Not being able to carry forward the losses of previous year. This seems to be some other problem. This seems to be some other compliance related issue. It does not really seem to do anything with the law. It could well be a problem in the website or some failed compliances, or a lot of belated returns may not allow carry forward of losses. ये problem वहाँ से हो रहा है. Legal इनकम टैक्स लॉ के हिसाब से ये दिक्कत नहीं है, ये और कुछ टेक्निकल या एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव टाइप का ग्लिच लग रहा है मुझे. एंड दिस इज मी आंसरिंग टू द क्वेश्चन व्हिच इज पोस्ड बाय Mr. Sudhir Sharan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Akshat. It was such an enlightening talk. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Bye.
Bye.